Today's episode of Desertwood Days with Kathy Blaze is sponsored by Dork Publishing, expanding minds through fantasy since 2018. Learn more at the Dork Publishing website, www.dorcpublishing.com.
Thanks for returning back, and today we have an interesting guest for you. Let's welcome Mr. Steve Hegarty. Hello there.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you for having me.
So, Steve, you're a comedian.
I am. I started doing stand-up comedy this year. I turned 53. I quit my job as a college professor and figured, you know what, it really is never too late to disappoint your family, so
I like that.
here I am.
So, Steve, what was it like the first time you stepped foot on that stage?
It was a little bit scary. Having been a college professor, I'm used to talking in front of a group of people and trying to be entertaining because nobody wants to hear Charlie Brown's teacher wonking away for 5 hours a day of class. And yeah, it was a little scary. The first on-stage thing I did was an open mic at Improv Mania down at Chandler, which is a great place. And yeah, it was a little scary, and I, stumbled a little bit at first, and then jumped into the bit that I was doing and got good response.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting.
That is awesome. But you know what? I always like to go back and
Sure.
learn a little bit about the young Steve. So tell me about the young Steve. What was your interest then? Were you thinking about being a comedian at that time?
Wasn't necessarily thinking about being a comedian. I always wanted to do film and television. When I was in junior high, there was a touring band that came around, and I got to be part of the stage crew.
Okay.
And that kind of got me excited about doing that sort of stuff. And after high school, I actually applied to USC Film School, got in, but couldn't afford the tuition.
Right.
Grew up with a single mom and everything. And when I...
Congrats, Mom.
Yes. God bless her. And a couple months after the semester started, I got the letter, oh, you've been granted, financial aid, but at that point it was too late.
Right.
But it was always something I wanted to pursue. Being a stand-up comedian was not something I wanted to do. I've done a couple TV commercials, did an episode of America's Most Wanted, an episode of Discovery ID, I Love the Way You Lie. And
Okay.
given my look, I'm typically cast as the detective.
I can see that.
And it was fun. I worked at Scottsdale Community College in the theater and TV department for a while with some really cool people, and that was a lot of fun. And then this year, at the beginning of the year, a friend of mine and I, who was also the program director and an instructor at the college, we left, and it availed me the opportunity to take a class. And it was at Stir Crazy in Glendale, which is a great club. I've performed there. Tom Symes, the owner, is wonderful. And the woman who put the class on, and her name is Deanne Kincaid.
Okay, her name sounds familiar.
Yeah, she's been...
But I want to go back.
Sure.
You giving me everything
Sorry,
there. But when you were younger and you had an interest in the arts,
Yeah.
was there someone that inspired you back then?
No, I don't think not one particular person. Like I said, it was that one event with the touring band. And I think as a kid growing up, I always kind of daydreamed, and, I was a huge nerd.
Were you your only child?
No, I was the youngest of three.
Oh, okay.
I have an older brother and an older sister.
Okay.
But yeah, I was a nerd. I was, a huge Star Wars kid when they first came out, and going to those movies and that fantasy life and wanting to do those kind of things is kind of what got me into that.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I always tell people, and I think back as a kid, I was always doing stage plays. Me and my brother, I had three brothers.
Yep.
And we were always doing our own little plays. And so I was always interested in
Performing. Sure.
We were performing in our own way.
Yep.
But we just have to remember. And I think when we grow up, we stop, we lose our inner child. And because we have to play grown up every day.
Yep.
And we lose our inner child, and we forget the things that we love to do.
Absolutely. And, played a lot of make-believe as a kid and stuff like that. And I've been in healthcare for over 30 years and worked as a paramedic and respiratory therapist, critical care and trauma and stuff like that. And when you do that kind of thing, you always want to make sure you have something on the outside
right, because you've seen a lot of serious stuff.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I've always kind of stayed with the nerd stuff. I mean, I like comic books and nerd movies and Marvel and DC and that kind of stuff and Lord of the Rings. And
well, you know what? You're a handsome nerd.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And my wife will agree that my inner child is still out and going crazy.
So you had mentioned doing, was it Discovery ID?
Yes.
Discovery ID. Did you say America's Most Wanted?
I did. I did an episode of America's Most Wanted years ago and then Discovery ID.
Okay. Now, who's the host of America's Most Wanted again?
It was,
what's his name? Is he the one that used to go and chase after these bad people that did horrible things?
Yeah, his son.
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
I can't think of his name. John something.
Something, yeah.
But you know what? I can see you. There's some similarities there. I can see you being in that role.
Sure.
There's some similarities. He's going to keep you way in the back. Like, he's not going to take my role. But there's some similarities there, so I can see why you got cast in a lot of those roles. So you've been in films, you've done commercials, so you've done a little bit of everything.
I have.
So it was just right for you to step into.
It was.
On that stage, too.
Yeah, once we left the college and I'd taken a job for a rehab hospital as a clinical liaison. So I was in and out of the hospitals and talking to people and kind of trying to be entertaining and things like that. And I had started looking and I saw a class with Deanne Kincaid and I took it and it was great. It was 8 weeks. You're on stage every night practicing and joke telling and working on your material and stuff like that. And
every night?
One night a week for 8 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And it culminates with a student showcase. I was the anchor performer. I did 11 and a half minutes on stage. And from that night, there's some comedy producers around town that showed up.
Okay.
And Randy Hauser, who owns Clean Comedy USA, booked me, said he wanted to book me. And 2 weeks later, I did my first professional gig at Stir Crazy. I opened up for Don Friesens, who's a national touring comedian. And it was great.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, because there's a lot of comedians that's been doing this for a little bit of time can say that they've opened up for someone to that caliber.
It was very cool.
That is awesome. How was it for you? I mean,
it was awesome.
Knowing that you were opening up for this guy.
It was really exciting. And, they had an opening act that did 5 minutes. And then they had a local comic that did 10 minutes and then someone else. And then I got to do 5 minutes right before he went on. And not to toot my own horn, but I killed. I had great laughs. It was a sold-out club. And even Don had said when I came off the stage, he's like, that was a great set. He's like, you were super comfortable up there. So, yeah, that really, after that, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this as much as I can.
Good. And I just think if you have it, you have it no matter how long you've been doing it. If you got that skill and you know what you're doing, and confidence is everything.
It really is. Like, if you're timid up there, you're going to get killed.
Yes.
And I've had nights where I've gone even to some open mics where I've left a huge bomb crater on stage. And especially because open mic nights at some places, it's all a bunch of comics that are just hanging out.
Right.
So if you can get a couple of laughs out of those guys, you're doing a good job.
Right. So what is your comedic style?
I do topical comedy. I try to stay away from politics, like real specific political stuff. I do some jokes on both sides because there's plenty of material there.
Right.
But yeah, I talk about life. I talk about my time as a paramedic and some of the crazy stuff I've seen and done there. I talk about being a professor. I have 2 daughters, and my youngest is special needs. She is profoundly autistic, and she suffers from Cornelia de Lange syndrome, which is a pretty rare condition. And she has 10 fingers and 10 toes, and she's adorable. Her name is Cassidy Ann. We call her the Cassapillar. But like, she doesn't talk. She's vocal but not verbal. She'll never live by herself, and so it's a hard life.
Beautiful name.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things. If you don't make jokes about it, you end up an alcoholic or a clock tower sniper, and neither of which has any longevity. So I make jokes about that kind of stuff.
So it's understandable. So you mentioned being a clean comedic. Do you consider yourself a clean comedian?
Yeah, most of the time, like the first show I did was clean comedy, and then I entered a contest this year. It was the funniest comedian in the Valley, and it was put on by JP's Comedy Club in Gilbert, which is a great club, family owned. A lot of local comics get to work there, and the first round I did was clean, no curse words, things like that. If you can do clean comedy, you can always drop a curse word in here or there, but you don't have to pepper your work with that kind of stuff. And as a clean comic, you tend to get more work. You can do corporate gigs and things like that.
Sure. Well, we will be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Desertwood Days, and I am here with the talented Steve Hegarty. So, Steve, we were talking about all this history that you've had being in the healthcare industry. Do you use any of that material?
I do. I talk about my time on the ambulance as a paramedic, some funny stories about delivering a child and some things like that. I talk about some of the stuff when I worked in the hospital as an RT and being a college professor as well. And it wasn't your typical college professor. I would yell at my students a lot, and not for no reason. But how do you misspell CPR? It only has 3 letters. I'd be like, you're not even trying right now.
Unless they have like ADHD or something, then
it's allowable. I let them spell it backwards. If they're dyslexic, they can spell it backwards.
Right. Yeah, that's what it is. Dyslexic. Okay, not ADHD. Well, it could be a little bit of both of them. Who knows?
It could be.
So you had a lot of material, a lot of history and material to go with. So, is there anything that you stay away from?
Like I said, politics, some stuff, I don't go too deep into it because it gets really divisive and you never want to lose a crowd.
Right.
And it depends on where you're performing. If I'm in Gilbert or if I'm in Glendale or Scottsdale, you have to kind of know your audience.
Okay.
And someone once told me too, they don't do religion, sports, or politics because people will get very angry about some stuff.
Yes.
I'm a huge sports fan, so I try not to do too much of that.
Isn't something how sports is thrown in there with those two things?
I thought it was really bizarre as well, and there was one comic, he was talking, and he said like the worst response he ever got, and someone got really angry and like approached him in the parking lot after a show because he was bagging on the Lakers or something. Like it got really ugly. I'm like, all right, good to know.
Well, I know my ex was a Philly fan, and you get those Phillies and those Cowboys together. It's like,
I know.
You don't start bagging on either of them, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I grew up in New England, so Red Sox and Yankees back and forth. It can get ugly, so I try to stay away from that kind of stuff.
And you think it's supposed to be fun.
It is.
So, as a comedian, when you get up on that stage, is that what you're thinking? I'm going out here, I'm going to tear this up, and
Yep. I want to make people laugh. If I can go up there and for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever my set is, you're kind of shooting for a laugh every 30 seconds, give or take. So I go up there and I just want to connect with the crowd. And
do you feel like you're in control when you're up there, or do you allow them to sway how you go? How does that work?
I guess it's a little bit of both. Like as soon as I take the stage, I want to set the tone and be in charge, if you will, kind of like I would do in the classroom. Because students, like audience members, can smell fear,
right?
Like babies and dogs, right?
Yes.
So I try to be in control, and if I get a laugh right away, I know I got them, and I just run. If that first one, you're kind of like, and I just, when I first started, I've only been doing it for 6 months. There was a couple of shows, a couple of times I was up, that little stumble in the beginning, and you kind of see the audience, so like, and you catch it right away and keep moving through, and once you get them, you got them.
Okay, so I always like to ask this question, being mature talent, and
that's a nice way to say old.
Yes, I always say mature. We're around a lot of young talent, and sometimes you're feeling like grandpa or grandma sitting there with all the young folks. How do you handle that?
Part of it, I'm 53, but I'm a juvenile in a lot of ways, so it makes it a little bit easier. Yeah. And having been a teacher for so long, I'm used to relating to, younger population for, most of my students at the time.
Do you feel that you have to prove yourself to them?
No. At 53, once you get to a certain age, you're like, what? I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I got up on stage. I took a shot that most people will never do.
Right.
I've done things that most people will never do.
Sure.
So I just go and do my thing, and a lot of the young comics that I've met, like I do a writing group with a few of the guys, and everyone's just trying to do their best. We try to help each other out.
That's good. That's good. So, what does the wife and the children think about this comedian?
My oldest daughter, Marley, loves it. She thinks it's great. She always asks if she can come to the shows. And when I have a clean one coming up, I'll bring her. My youngest Caterpillar, she doesn't get it. My wife has been supportive, and it's tough with, a special needs daughter.
Right.
It's a lot of work. So, she's supportive when I go. I try not to go out too much just because it makes it hard on one person.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I love that. I love that you're a husband, you're a father, and you're a special needs parent.
Yep.
And you know what? I always say it takes a lot. It takes a strong person to be in that role. I feel like God blessed you to be there just to take care of what you call a Caterpillar.
Yep.
You were given that role to take care of her.
Yeah, I really was. And I worked pediatrics and, some NICU stuff. And I'd never even heard of Cornelia de Lange syndrome. And we didn't know till she was almost 9 months old.
Wow.
Because everything, throughout the pregnancy and ultrasounds, everything was normal. And she was term, but early term. And, she a couple of days in NICU, 4 or 5 days after she was born for hearing issues and feeding stuff, nothing too severe. And then she started to miss some milestones. She wasn't hitting some certain things. And it was actually her ENT who's like, yeah, she looks like you guys and her sister, but she reminds me of a patient that I have. He's like, I think she has this. And she, of course, is like, well, don't look it up on the internet. You're like, as fast as you can. We're like, yep, she's got it. And because like a Down syndrome where the kids share a lot of similar facial features.
Okay.
And a lot of the kids come out with significant physical deformities, shortened forelimbs, missing fingers, missing hands or arms, things like that. Yeah, a lot of the kids are trached and tube fed and stuff like that. So it can be really difficult. But as a clinician, I was like, all right, well, it is what it is. We'll deal with it. And cognitive delays, developmental delays. And I always said, if she has to wear a helmet sometimes, it's going to be pink and have fun stickers. And it did. And yeah, so you just kind of, you roll with it and you deal with it.
So as a comedian, are you releasing a lot of the stuff that you go through in your personal life,
Absolutely.
Professional life out there on that stage?
I do. And there's a lot of comics that get up to talk about, I was in therapy. I talked to my therapist. I'm like, I'm not going to therapy. I'm just going to come out here and tell all you strangers my stuff.
Right.
So I do a lot of stuff about Caterpillar and, how life with her is and what we go through and make jokes about it and make it fun. And
Right. So if there was I don't want to say celebrity comedian out there, is there one that I want to say you admire or you aspire to be like?
Wow. I think guys like Dave Chappelle, who
one of my favorites.
does it, he is just so awesome up there on stage.
It's just natural.
Exactly.
Right.
So, to try to emulate someone like that and God, willing I could get to that level.
Right.
You just go out there and, try to do your best. But yeah, comics like that, like George Carlin was amazing.
Right.
And he was topical and just talked about life and,
he was natural too.
Yeah, and just showing people like the absurdity of life and things. Everyone goes through it. Everybody struggles.
You know what? Who else reminds me of? Rodney Dangerfield. I know I'm aging myself. He's an older one, but Rodney Dangerfield, he was really natural with it. It's just like it just flowed.
Yep.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself in 5 years with this?
Ideally, I'm a touring national comedian with a couple of Netflix specials and whatever coming out. And
you hear that, Netflix?
Yes, please, Netflix. It's the goal. If I stayed working in Metro Phoenix and Arizona, great. If I could move above and beyond, then that's my goal. And just keep writing jokes, make people happy, make them laugh. And if you can make someone laugh, someone could be having a crappy day, someone takes them to a comedy show or whatever, or you make a joke that someone can relate to in their life, and it makes them laugh, you make a connection, and they have a good time.
Right, and that's a blessing.
It is.
Be able to give someone that.
Yeah.
Because you never know what someone's going through in their life.
Exactly. There's, life is hard enough. If you can make someone laugh and give them a little break, that's what matters.
But you've been in the industry, in the healthcare industry, you've seen a lot of stuff.
I have.
So being a comedian, did you take some of that to work at times?
Oh yeah, because we would always make jokes like in the squad bay on the ambulance. We'd always be cracking jokes and ripping on each other and things like that, and even talking to patients in the back. trying to make them smile or laugh and about their day when we're picking them up or whatever the
Right.
case is. Especially in the hospital, anytime I walked into a patient room, like working critical care and trauma and stuff like that is great. You use all your skill set, but someone has to be in pretty tough shape.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things was just going into a patient room and give them a breathing treatment and doing their assessment, talking to them, showing you someone cared about them, and
Right.
make them laugh and make them smile, and and I would entertain them while I was there and crack some
Lovely.
jokes and make them
love
laugh.
that. So, where can our audience find you?
On Instagram, Stephen Hegarty Comedy, Stephen.
Okay.
And I Facebook. And then coming up on November 27th, I'm at JP's Comedy Club in Gilbert
Okay.
for a showcase show. And then on December 14th at JP's as well, I'm producing my first comedy show. It's a charity event for the Giving Tree for Christmas and for Casa Pillars CDLS Foundation. So you can check us out there and get tickets online.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
And I
much.
look forward to hearing more about Steve Hegarty.
Thank you.
And you should too. And thank you for joining us here today at Desertwood Days, and we'll catch you next time.